It is Indiana in the Morning, presented as always by First Commonwealth Bank here on WCCS AM 1160 and 101.1 FM. Good morning to you. 7:43, 17 away from the top of the hour. If you have a question for Bob Pollock, give him a call. 479-1160 or 349-WCCS. He'll take a shot at it. I'm going to reach across here and say good morning to Bob.
Good morning.
I'm going to hand you this. This is a withered up leaf.
It's withered up, all right.
Name the plant.
Well, I'd say that's a tomato.
That's a tomato.
Or was.
Name what happened.
And it's not the fruit. It's a leaf.
It's a leaf off of a tomato stalk. Mm-hmm.
Well,
you're looking at...
That looks like Septoria leaf spot. A bad case of it.
Yeah. And what is the remedy for that such a thing? I'll describe it to it. It's a withered up leaf off a tomato plant, and it's yellowed and has black dots all over it. Yeah. Okay.
Yep, that's what it looks like.
And what causes it?
That's a fungus that causes that.
Mm-hmm.
And especially on a year like this year, where we've had more than ample moisture up until this point.
Uh-huh.
Lots of dew, humidity, temperatures, and, well, rainfall as well.
Yeah, all those things.
That just keeps plant leaves wet for too long.
Mm-hmm.
These kind of diseases will develop, and this gets bad. And it can take over the whole plant or enough of it that you'll have very little foliage left. So you may still get some fruit, or fruit may be developing, but they will be exposed to too much sunlight.
I see.
There's no plant there to shade them, so that it's not going to produce very well. And
so these particular plants in the garden, they're very, very healthy looking. They're very bushy, and those leaves are on the bottoms of the stalks.
Okay.
Will they progress up? Is there a treatment for them?
Yeah, it will progress up if we have wetting periods that make the leaves damp and allow those spores to move around.
Okay.
And that happens when it rains. You can get some, just having the moisture there will allow the rain to splash or hit on the leaf, and then that little tiny water droplets will bounce around, and then they'll take some of the fungal spores, and they will move to other parts of the plant. So it can work its way up the plant.
Does antifungal spray stop it?
Taking, right now, one of the things you can do is those lower leaves. Early blight is another one that we'll commonly see that works its way up from the bottom.
Okay.
And so because the spores of that are more than likely in the soil at the base of the plant, and get splashed up on the lower leaves, and so then it just works its way up the plant. So you can take these bottom leaves off that are infected and get those out of there so that they're no longer a source of spores to cause new disease on new leaves. So that will help. And just trying to sometimes thinning out the plants a little bit. If you haven't, you can get a lot of suckers. You can get a lot of growth inside the plants if you have them caged up, or if you string them up. It just gets dense in there, and so the humidity builds and moisture builds and stays there longer, which then promotes more disease.
So they need more air around.
So so properly spacing them to begin with, just allowing enough room for the plants to grow, doing a little desuckering, so you can have a branch. You can have maybe two branches coming out of kind of one point along the main stem, and one's going more vertical. You can just pinch one of those out earlier on, just to open the plant up a little bit.
Okay.
So that'll work. And then, of course, we've got preventive fungicides that can be applied, whether it's an OMRI, the Organic Materials Research Institute listed products, or other products that are labeled for that use to control leaf spots such as Septoria, early blight, can be used preventatively. And in really all those cases, they all have to be used preventatively to keep this from developing.
Okay, very good. It's not fatal.
No, it can be.
Can be if you don't
take care. Right, if you don't control it, it can take over the plant.
All right, let's say good morning to our caller. Hi.
Hi, I might have missed Bob mentioning this, but is Daconal effective against septoria?
Yes. Yes, it is.
It is. Second question, is there any report, since we're talking about blight, any report on late blight yet?
Not around here, no. There was earlier, like a month ago almost, up in the northeast part of Pennsylvania and one spot in New York. In both those cases, the plantings were destroyed. So that kind of stopped that in its tracks, and there have been no reports since then of any outbreaks.
Am I correct in saying that generally late blight travels from the Carolinas and Florida on the low pressure fronts and currents?
Yes, for the most part, that is correct. It will move from other production areas that are ahead of us, so that where they start the season sooner than we do, and that's the case with a number of different diseases. Will move that way because there's other places that have started and are growing crops. They get infected with the disease. Then we have storm fronts come through that then pick up the spores or move those organisms on the storm fronts, and then they land in other areas. So they can come not only up from the south, but sometimes they'll come in from the west as well.
Oh.
So just depending on where those storm fronts are and the production areas and and where the infection occurs. And of course with the late blight, we can have that. It doesn't overwinter here.
Right.
Can be couple exceptions to that, but for the most part, just outside, normally it does not overwinter here. You can have it overwinter in an infected potato, for instance, that was grown last year. So potato call piles that might survive that were infected, that can be a source to start things up on a given year someplace. Or in southern production areas where it doesn't ever get cold enough to kill off, or where they've continuously have susceptible tomato and potato plants growing, then it keeps going. So that's pretty much how it moves around. You're welcome.
Thank
and there's
you.
usablight.org. So that's a web page where they do track the development of late blight throughout the season, so people report in when there's confirmed cases of that. It gets posted on that web page, and so that you can see where it's been the most recent 7 days, and then anything within 7 days is listed and shown in red, and they have maps of the country there, and then you can zoom in or zoom out and look at that, and it does it by county, and then if it's been 7 days or more, then it'll show up in blue on that map. So that's a way we can track where it is and what's going on, and give us a little bit of predictiveness to, look ahead and see whether we need to be, whether something's imminent or whether we're okay for now.
Okay, I'm looking at that site right now, not in PA.
Nope. Yeah, there was just that one spot up in the north, one of the north central counties up there, but that was earlier.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well,
they also do that monitoring for downy mildew, which is a disease that will get on cucurbit crops, cucumbers, and those vine crops. So there's also a monitoring system for them there where they will identify where it's been identified for sure, what those locations are, and then because that will also move on some of our weather fronts and move around.
He's Bob Pollock. You can give him a call at 479-1160 or 349-WCCS, of course, from our Indiana County Extension office. As we look at a very hot week coming,
yes,
people will be wondering, okay, what do I do to protect my flowers, my plants, all those things that can be affected by all this heat? What are some of the things that we need to be aware of and looking out for? Just
as we usually should be doing is just to monitor the plants. course, potted plants are going to dry out or be affected much quicker than plants that are planted in the soil.
As you said a couple of weeks ago, water them in the morning.
Yes, yeah. Try to water the root system, water the soil, not don't hose down the whole plant.
Mm-hmm.
That just helps promote diseases. If those plants are susceptible to things, it just ups the ante, increases the chance that you can get various leaf spots and things on whatever plant it is. So water the soil. The roots are what absorb the water. Keep an eye on them closer. When we spike into these kind of temperatures, potted plants will dry out very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, you're going to start to see them wilt. Probably is the first symptom or sign that you will see.
If you have the
problem,
if you have the opportunity, you can just pull them back so they're all in the shade.
Well, you don't have to do that, but that can be a way. Move them, or part of the day, if you have them sited in one spot, and if you can give them a little bit of out of the direct sunlight for part of the day, that can be helpful. Or just keep an eye on them, keep them watered,
mm-hmm.
Or set up a little irrigation system, or they have some interesting things now where you can use water bottles, and you can actually fill a water bottle and turn that upside down and put that in the pot, so that'll release water slowly, and then it'll buy you some time to check it and water it, and you don't have to do it as often if you have sort of a watering system set up. So you can do that. Now, because the ground has been so saturated, and we could almost, there's going to be cases, I think, we're going to warm up to this high a temperature and have sunlight. We're going to kind of bake the soil.
Yeah.
It's going to dry out quickly, so you can get into situations where that ground is going to become hard.
Yeah.
Like a brick.
And cracked.
Yes, and crack open.
Mm-hmm.
So just keep an eye on that. So in the garden, if that happens, just light cultivation will help break that crusting. So if you've planted, if you have some succession crops planted, say you're doing multiple plantings of beans,
mm-hmm.
You may need to loosen that soil up so that those seeds can germinate and get up through that soil, because that crusting can be hard enough that it will prevent seeds from germinating.
Okay.
So just keep that in mind and
mm-hmm.
keep an eye on that.
All right.
But because we've had this kind of moisture in the ground, I expect that we'll see some of that coming up here.
Sure. Yeah, out in the garden, it's different because you're not moving those plants. They're staying where they are.
I've seen a case this week of mulching where the mulch there's been so much moisture that mulch has crusted.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, so it kind of becomes, it's still moist, but it's just a compacted layer on top. So
mm-hmm.
that can impede and keep moisture from getting out. It might roll off quicker than it'll soak in.
Mm-hmm.
So loosening up that mulch can be helpful.
Yeah.
Also, with mulching, just remember to keep the mulch away from the trunk of plants, so that the base of the plant, we don't want to mound mulch up against there. 2 instances this week where that was causing some issues on plants. One, it was a issue that if left there over time was going to cause decline in those plants. Eventually, it'll kill them. It's just like a slow death when you mound mulch up against the trunk of a plant.
Mm-hmm.
The root system can grow in the ground. It's adapted to do that and can handle it. But the bark and the trunk of a tree is not able to do that. So what will happen is it will rot.
Okay.
That moisture, staying moist on that bark over time, will cause it to rot and decay. And once that happens, the plant will die because you've got the live part of that, whether it's a shrub or a tree,
mm-hmm.
is right underneath the bark. So the outside layer and the bark itself is all dead cells, but right underneath that is all the live cells, and where the water and the nutrients are transported and the food for the plant. And if we essentially girdle that or cause that to decay, then the plant will decline.
Okay.
So just all you have to do, it's okay to mulch. 2 or 3 inches of mulch is all you need to help a little bit with weed control, to help keep soil temperatures lower and moderate any changes that might happen. So when we go up into the 90s for a week or so here, having that mulch there helps keep those soil temperatures. They won't jump as high or as quickly as they would as compared to bare soil.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Okay, there you go. He's Bob Pollock from the Extension Service. This has been informative today.
Well, good. I'm glad.
That's
what we should be doing, right?
That's why we're here.
It surely is.
It is the voice of Indiana County, WCCS, AM 1160 and 101.1 FM. Fox News is coming up next at the top of the hour, and then Josh Woodison in our WCCS newsroom.